The turtle, that's, well, like Randy said in, in his, when he was talking, that it's kind of like, if you really look at North America, it's kind of shaped in almost like a turtle, if you really look at it and study it. But I was talking with my dad one time, and he's a carver, and he made this little turtle necklace for me, gave it to me, and out of pipestone, it's a stone. And so, and I said, "So what does this mean?" And he says, it means long life. And then he told me, then because of the North America is shaped like it, and it's just a long life for your life, for my daughter's life. And so, and he passed away a couple of years later after that. And it's just, I guess for me, the turtle is very, just very meaningful for me because of what my father told me. And then I just kind of fell in love with turtles ever since. I don't know if that, answers your, but, my dad, he grew up knowing his stories. He grew up knowing his traditions before he went to boarding school. And then, so, yeah.
And I think it is kind of universal in a sense. I mean, there's not a lot that's pan-Indian, but I think maybe, as soon as I say that, I'll be found out to be wrong. But like we were down in Hopi land, and I'd been in the hospital because they found a blood clot on my heart. And so then I found out I had atrial fibrillation. And when we got down to Hopi land, one of the Hopi women who was a friend of ours made a Hopi basket for us in the shape of a turtle. And she said, this is because you're going to have long life. And so she gave it to me. So I think it may be universal. Turtles live a long time. I'm kind of glad they chose turtle instead of parrot. Yeah.
Thank you. I think in that, I think Jim's question also speaks to something that we've talked a lot about in our Lenten season as well, is that I think particularly for Western people, we often think of Indigenous as monolithic, like there's just one Indigenous worldview, one story. And as your story pointed out this morning, there's lots, or as you just said too, there's lots of creation stories. There's lots of different interpretations, and it's not like there's just one thought or one worldview.
Yeah. So my PhD dissertation was on the Harmony Way, and I sought to find out how widespread this construct was across North America, both Canada and the U.S., among Indigenous peoples, and then what values that were held in common. And I was only able to do 45 different tribes, all across every region of the U.S. and Canada, and they all had a Harmony Way construct. And I was able to, if you will, extract 10 values that were common among all of those. And so there is also, even though we're all different, there's also some very common values, and our Harmony Way is sort of the main, I guess, center of everyone's understanding of how to live life. So.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh yeah, let's hear from someone here. So yeah, Cheryl has a microphone there, Leslie. Yeah, you can just hit the bottom button. You should see a green light. Come on.
There it is, I think.
Hello?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Testing. I'm wondering about the background and how you two came to what you're doing now, and if you grew up with Western theology and the tension of that with Indigenous stories, and how you and what you might face out there speaking to people, the challenge that you might have with the tension between those two.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, we got what, the rest of the afternoon? No, but just real quick, I grew up on the reservation out in Wyoming, and I'm the youngest of 9 children. My dad was a product of boarding school. He survived the boarding school system, the Native American boarding school system. And when he came home, he was at home with his mother for a year before she passed away with cancer. And then a month later, my grandfather died in a car accident. And then he was an alcoholic. And then he divorced his wife, married a couple of years later, he married my mother, and then my brother and I came along. And so I lived in a very chaotic home. My mother was not an alcoholic, she was a Christian. My grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher down in Southeast Oklahoma, and a Choctaw preacher. And so she grew up in that kind of lifestyle. My dad grew up in a different one. They came together, and my mother just did her best just to keep the family together. My dad eventually stopped drinking, you know, and I went through my own stuff. I couldn't wait to leave the reservation. I was very ashamed of who I was as a Native person. My reservation's poor, and we were poor. And so when I had an opportunity to leave, I left, and I never went back. I regret that, because as an adult, you know, there's those things that you wish you would have known. You got to know your parents better. And after we got married, I had my own issues, drugs, alcohol, stuff like this. And eventually I got myself together. We ended up getting married, and I had to face who I was as a Native person. Yeah, I got clean from drugs and stuff, but I never had faced who I was as a Native person. And yes, I grew up in the culture. I grew up around my Native peoples, going to powwows, going to different ceremonies. But they were never, I was more on the sideline, we farm all that stuff, and it was never told to me, this is who you, what your language is. My dad never taught me the language, because he said, I asked him later, I said, why didn't you teach me my language? He said, because I didn't want you to have to go through what I had to go through. And so I didn't really, I used to tell Randy, he was more Indian than I was. I got the looks. I got, you know, I got the family, I got the reservation, I got that little card that says I'm a Native American. But his heart and soul and the way he thought was more Native than I felt. And it took me several years to finally be able to grasp who I was as a Native person. And when I did, it was just like, okay, I'm on board now. I get this. But it was also being able to sit under elders who were very patient, and they weren't elders from my tribe. It was elders from the Kiowa tribe in Southeast Oklahoma. No, from Western Oklahoma, where we were living. There were Kiowa and Comanche elders, and who had the patience to teach us or teach me. And Randy learned a lot too. But so it took me a while to really grasp who I was as a Native person. So, yeah, and then.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah, both my parents are mixed blood Cherokee and white. My very assimilated, and like hung out with the other assimilated Native people who were all a part of our church. And I was raised Baptist, American Baptist, and I would go to Friday night meetings with them and as a kid, and they all played music together and got together Friday night, and they'd all tell stories about their Indian grandmothers and grandfathers and, all this. And I was like, I decided at, I think maybe around 9, like, that's not the kind of Indian I wanted to be. I wanted to be a real Indian, not the kind that sits around going, remember when we were kids and they talked the language? So I just started trying to find other people who were more practicing native culture as a kid growing up, and hang out with them and their parents, and just sort of went on that journey. Had a lot of good teachers, the elders that you just talking about were all incredible people. And I just, I try to think about when I get in tough decisions, what would they say? What would they want me to say? And so you mentioned something, it wasn't about resistance, but it was something like that. We received persecution and resistance from the native churches who had been what I call missionized. And so at one point I was the director of the Oklahoma Indian American Baptist churches. And I had 10 native churches I worked with, and all the ones who had white missionaries hated me, and all the ones who didn't loved me, because I was bringing back like permission to be native again, right? And all the traditional people that weren't Christian but were traditional, they loved us and what we were doing, and said, our grandparents told us one day the Christians and our traditional people would see that there's just one God, and we're supporting you because that's what you teach, So yeah, we've received a lot of support throughout the years. Most of those elders are all gone now, and we have trouble facing elderhood. I think we're ready to say elder juniors, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Great question. Jan.
There we go. Thank you so much for coming, sharing your stories and your wisdom. Really appreciate it. In regards to the environment, we do what we can, and at times it gets overwhelming when we see the big picture, of course. And so then I kind of try to do what's close by me so I don't get stopped, right? But I always butt up against corporations and what they're doing. I look at what I'm doing and I look at what they're doing, and it's very defeating. And I'm wondering what thoughts you have in regards to influencing their thought, their priorities on the world.
So we've done grassroots organizing in the past. We're kind of getting old for that now, but we do support and lead people to different organizations. In particular, what we think is the fastest path to change is to grant Earth human rights. So there's a number of organizations that are about rights of the earth. And we have those listed on our website. If you go to our website and look at like the land, there's a little section called the land, I think. And in that we have a statement about earth rights and a statement. And then we have a list of different organizations who we support, who have political influence and lobbyists and stuff, who are trying to do something. Yeah, I mean, I always say, like, if I was like 18 years old right now, I'd probably be blowing stuff up, but I'm past that point. But it makes me so mad that I want to, right? So I think there's just multiple strategies that we have to use and organize and get at it. The youth, I forget the name of the case, but the youth versus United States is one case. We've got all these reports coming out that give us more fuel for the fire, if you will. But corporations have known about this stuff since like at least the 70s, right? I mean, So it's not like they're going to change overnight unless we make them change. Part of what we do when we do a full presentation, we have a whole list of companies. We say, don't support these people and do support these people. And, you know, here's some like to-do list of things that we can do both on our own and politically. And, you know, I think, I don't know any other way to do things in this country against a corporatocracy, except for to dethrone the corporatocracy. And it takes a lot of people to do that. And some very vocal people, but you know, we got to get like Hollywood and other people on our side. But yeah, it's a long battle, and it's not changing fast enough. So again, Earth rights. Of course, Bolivia and Cochabamba was the first to grant their country Earth rights in their constitution. Then Ecuador, and then they've been battling, right? The meat producers and all those kinds of things, and then we've had a number of cities in the U.S. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has adopted a lot of Earth rights laws. Santa Monica, California, and so we have to start sort of in our world. So I like to talk about like my world and the world, right? So what am I doing in my world? So we sort of have this, like, as soon as we get all of our buildings built and foundational structure in and everything, then trying to create a chemical-free Yamhill County in terms of the growers. And you know, I've already talked to one politician. I've talked to another person who's in charge of a tourism thing, and we'd like to see Yamhill County become the first county that's completely pesticide, herbicide free, which would be we're probably the biggest user in the state of Oregon, I'm guessing. So, but you know, we intend to get politically active again. We're already part of a group that does stuff. But yeah, it is frustrating, but I don't know if it's not probably the best overall solution. But I think it's the fastest way to stop it is to create a Lake Oswego Earth Rights Organization or whatever, wherever you're at, and then move to the county, you know, and go from there, because we can't change the world, but we can change our world, right? So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple on Zoom. Great. Okay, so yeah, let's hear from Carl.
Okay, thank you for mentioning the legal approach to helping to save the earth. We will be screening the Youth versus Gov documentary on Tuesday evening, actually. So that you're welcome to that. The link is in the bulletin and in the chat. My wife Nancy has just put in the chat as well a legal case in Florida in which a lake is suing to defend itself. So a first of its kind legal case. So that it's interesting, and I think your approach about trying to give Mother Earth some legal rights is one of the approaches. So those are comments. The question I have, we have a cohort involved with Reckoning with Racism, and many of us heard you there for the first time, Randy. And we have been creating the story of the land we sit on. We're also considering developing a land acknowledgement. And I'd like to know what your opinion is about land acknowledgements. Ideally, what should they do?
I think I got that, Carl, and I do recognize you from on your face on our platform before. So yeah, nice to see you again. Yeah, so land acknowledgement, right? It's starting to catch on in Canada. It's sort of a requirement based on the Truth and Reconciliation Committee action steps, but we haven't had that here. Yeah, so as more people acknowledge, I think that's a very good thing. Churches acknowledge, meetings acknowledge, et cetera. That's a first step. Second step would be like actually making sure that people know that like, for example, Calapooians where we live are alive and well, where they're enrolled, like make announcements what their stuff is, attend, educate yourself culturally, try to make friends at the public events, find out how you can be helpful politically, like what are the issues they're fighting. And it's going to almost always be land rights or water rights. Or right now, I think the Calapooians, the Grand Round are looking at hunting and fishing rights. But and then join in, support them that way, be an ally that way. And yeah, but if it's just going to be like an acknowledgement and never go any further, then because I had a pastor ask me that one time. It's like, we do this every week, but that's all we do. And I'm like, well, then you should just put up a sign that says, so you don't have to do it every week. This is the land of the so-and-so, and we're not going to do anything else about it. So.
I'm going to take right of privilege here and piggyback on that, because that was a question I had following up on Carl's question, because it was either at the UCC meeting or Reckoning with Racism, you shared a little wheel that was like awareness, lament, reparations, and memorializing. And we've really appreciated that. And we have kind of picked up on that same theme and actually delineated between lament and repent, like just some empathy and then actually repentance. And I would say our church is very much still in the education, the learning, the lamenting, and gradually moving into repenting and repair. And so I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit more to that repair question, which you just were touching on, but just other examples of what you've seen communities doing, because that's what we're trying to discern is like, what does that repair look like? What does repentance look like? How do we next steps?
Okay, so I'm just going to do this the easy way. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? A movie is worth 100,000 words. I think you should show a movie, and you can actually pull it up online. It's called Two Rivers. And if you look under the TWISP Cultural Center, I think it is TWISP, Washington, and look at the model that they did. And like before I came up with my steps, they had done this and I didn't know it. And I looked and it's like, well, they met all the criterion for the steps. Like, it's not like it's a formula, but this is the story that was documented of a group of white folks in a community, TWISP, Washington, who said, like, why are there no natives here? And why is everything named native names? And, why is everybody white? And, and eventually they began to meet people, get educated. And they took like a 3-year process. And then they held a public meetings, and then they held a public event. And now they have that memorial marker is at a cultural center that was donated to them, a half acre in town. The people who started the reconciliation thing are sort of running it. Native people from that tribe are all on the board, and their stuff is displayed, et cetera, et cetera. And they've really done something. So like I could describe something to you, but I think you just have a night where you all watch Two Rivers. And at the end of that movie, you'll get ideas of things to do. So.
Great. Yeah, thank you. We have a couple more on Zoom. Jim Gaudino, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. And I'm actually going to change my question from what's in the chat, because I think you covered it, and that was about my Native colleagues who are more able to embrace and hold Native spirituality, Indigenous spirituality with other faiths, and not get into the single-minded, you must go this way. But my question is now, the UCC has talked about, with an author named Jim Attall, about the need for the church. One of the places of relevance for addressing our climate disaster crisis right now would be the role of the church. And you spoke about this in your talk, Randy. And I would really love to hear a little bit more of your thinking about that. I think the young people are looking for leadership from elders like us, and they're moving ahead whether we're with them or not. Thank you for your comments to both you and you.
Jim, sorry, you cut out for a second, but I think it's just the role of the church in just the environmental justice landscape in general. What role does the church specifically have to play? And he was referencing Jim Antal, who was a conference minister and has done a lot of environmental leadership in the United Church of Christ. But thinking, if we think of ourselves as elders in the UCC, basically what role does our church have to play?
No. Okay. So I'll look at both ends. Okay. First, the bottom end. Gen Y or Gen Z, I should say, and the millennials are leading the way on this. They do not want to inherit the paradigm that was given to them. So I'm a young boomer. I think some of you are boomers. And, you know, we did some stuff, but we didn't maintain our stuff. And so I think we need to be there to help them sustain and make good decisions, but sort of be junior partners. I really believe that they are leading the way and that we need to do everything, put our funds, our energy, our time into allowing them to do that because they have a passion for it. And so I'm excited and I'm hopeful because of that. So on the other end, you know, people like me, I've been getting older. Edith hasn't, but I have been getting older. And, you know, I'm a little bit tired. We've been fighting this fight for a long time. And so what can we do? So organizations like ours, organizations like Earth Rights International, organizations like GARN, G-A-R-N, I forgot the acronym, for the rights of Mother Nature, is it? I can't remember. Nature, G-A, Rights of Nature. Somebody can look that up. Honor the Earth Foundation, Winona LaDuke's organization. All of Native organizations have struggled financially. That's why we can't get anything done. So we're getting to a place where we get a platform to speak, but we have no finances to do our own stuff at home. So there's going to be, and I'm speaking on the other end now of the spectrum, there's going to be over 100,000 churches who close by 2025. What are you people going to do with these buildings? Right? Can no longer afford it. Can continue to wish, well, we just need more young people. I've got a plan for all these, give that money to organizations who are actually trying to do something, who need it and who've been without it for so long. And then as you saw the churches, and then create what I think is we could call the tiny church movement. And when you have, you know, a dozen people who still want to go to church every Sunday, you know, build a tiny church somewhere and let them continue to worship just like they wanted to. But let's take the resources that we have and put everything into doing what needs to be done right now. So.
Thank you. Any last question that anyone has? If not, I'm going to take it, and I'll take the last question, which is one of the things both in becoming rooted and in the Lenten devotional was each entry ended with a practice, an invitation to do something either to deepen our connection with earth or with one another. And so I'm just curious for your own personal lives, is there a practice, a few practices that are especially meaningful to you? And what would those be?
Well, is this on? Okay. the things I like to do to be able just to reconnect is just take a walk. I mean, I like to just go walking. When I go walking down in our wooded area, I just kind of reach out. I just touch the bushes, the plants, the trees, and I just kind of like, you know, it just thank them for being here, keeping me alive, and just marvel at their beauty and how they, in the springtime, how the little buds come up, and I look at them and I go, wow, this little bud is different from this little bud. So it's just spending that time for me in that nature, listening to the animal, listening to the birds, and watching them fly above me, different types. You know, we have the geese and we have some winter hawks that come out, that are out on around our property, and they just fly around. And I just, yeah, winter hawks. And they're kind of a grayish brown, kind of a grayish white color. And it's just, I just marvel at the way they fly. So it's just that time of just being out in nature and walking the ground. And then sometimes just sitting on the ground, you know, sitting on Mother Earth and just putting my hands in the dirt and feeling the warmth of it. And then from the top, and then as I get deeper into the soil, that coolness of it. And just, I don't know, I just like to, you know, just be outside and be in Mother Nature and just marvel at the creation that was created for us.
I guess we're a little bit of cheaters because since we farm, we got to be outside all the time. So we get our hands in the dirt, and we're able to watch. You know, we have a couple bald eagles now who fly over, but we've created and we have a lot of deer in our area, and you know, we leave room for the wildlife. There's 3 big sections of our property where we just don't mess with anything. We just leave it for the animals and the wildlife, and we get rewarded by seeing them. And so we're outside. We usually have, we used to, and we will be starting again soon, sweat lodge ceremonies. And so we've been leading sweat lodge for over 30 years. By the way, I'm looking for a stand of willows. Willows that are not really, they're not real thick and go up straight and long. So if anybody has those, let me know. I'll come cut them. And but yeah, during that ceremony, we get to think about all these things. A lot of times I just go sit on the back porch swing and just look at the mountains and just be outside. I mean, we have other ceremonies and things, but those are only done like once or twice a year. I do a water ceremony every morning when I wake up. Yeah, just being outside, I think that's the big thing. And the book's not that complicated, right? Because almost everything is like, go outside and then do different things, right? So it's just the idea is to get people connected, even in urban settings. It's like, you know, there is a community of creation around you. If you notice what it is, there's a whole environment, and I try to observe what ours is. It's interesting. It's a lot of fun to realize like whose neighborhood we moved in. Yeah. So.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Thanks for coming this way. Thank you for sharing your words and your time and your stories. And we can all are welcome out at Elohe on the last Saturday of the month. And we look forward to continuing this conversation, continuing the relationship. And we're glad to support you and appreciate your support of us as well. So thank you.
And thank you, because number one, you may be the first person that ever invited us to speak that pronounced Elohe right. And And secondly, I know you're the first person who just memorized our whole name and all those kinds of things. We were very impressed. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And it's a beautiful day. We can all go outside now and enjoy our precious Mother Earth. So thank you all. Thanks for staying
Thank you.
today too.